Fans Beyond Wrestling, this is Denver, Colorado, the man, not the place. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Positive Contact. Today's guest is Rickey Shane Page, and as always, Positive Contact being brought to you by Independent Wrestling TV. So sign up using promo code BEYOND. You'll get a 5-day free trial, and please stay on as a paid subscriber if you can afford to do so. Support the indies. And Rickey, what's the best way that the fans can support you right now?
Follow me on Twitch. I just started a Twitch channel. That would be the best way. At Rickey Shane Page on all social media. Pro Wrestling Tees if you want to. Go for it. If not, don't worry about it. Everybody's locked in their house. You don't got to buy my t-shirt.
It's kind of how I feel, too, is like, support if you can and support if you want to. But if not, like, don't stress it because people probably have more pressing stuff that they have to worry about.
Exactly. That's how I feel about it. Do what you can. If you can't, no worries. Take care of yourself.
Yeah. Let's get right into it. I wanted to specifically talk about kind of the formation of Beyond Wrestling. A lot of the most recent interviews, like when I talked to Dave Cole and Tony Deppen, like I asked them questions and then it's just like, fuck, we're old, like we can't remember anything. So I'm hoping that we can try and avoid that. I'm shot, man. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, and I didn't even wrestle like you guys did, so I got no excuse.
I will do my best. I'm usually pretty good with remembering things, like especially when it comes to wrestling. So I'll do my best.
All right. Well, Beyond Wrestling was kind of born out of the BYE series, which was the backyard wrestling super shows that I would host in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. What was your first experience with the backyard wrestling link?
Oh, first experience with the link. I went to the Sandusky Library in 1998, and I was just started backyard wrestling with my friends, and I Googled, or excuse me, I AOL hometown searched backyard wrestling, and the backyard wrestling link was the very first thing that came up. It didn't even have a message board when I first found it. It was just a website that had in alphabetical order according to state backyard wrestling promotions, and then it had like tutorials on how to like build a ring base, how to make a table, how to make like a the one thing I specifically remember was an exploding box.
Okay.
Which is where you took a cardboard box and you cut a circular hole in the sides of it and filled it with baby powder, and when you got slammed on it, it would just explode. There was a tutorial on how to make a homemade guitar, which is where you would take those, like, remember those like little crates that like tangerines used to come in?
Yeah.
They would like, you'd be like, oh, take 2 of those and like put them together and then have a broomstick coming out of it and then like smash somebody in the head with it. It was all like weird tutorials like that. And then I think like, you know, I just kept going to it because I didn't know how to do anything, and it was early on in the internet. And eventually the message board came and everybody started talking to each other and all things like that. I honestly don't think I started like posting on the link until after I'd already started like indie wrestling.
When did you start training?
I started training in 2003. But
so you'd already been doing backyard wrestling for a few years at that point?
Yeah, I did indie shows. I started doing indie shows in 2001 and then untrained. And then in 2003, I started, 2002. Maybe 2002, I started training, but then the school closed. So then the place that I trained at, Mega, they just like put me on shows. And then it opened back up in like 05, 06, but I'd already been wrestling for like 4 years. So I went like every day and trained. And then eventually that's where the first Beyond Tapings happened.
One of the things that I talked to Tony Deppen and Dave Cole about was kind of like, you know, still backyard wrestling, but still being professionally trained. You know, and obviously back then I just saw within the past couple of days, Anarchy Andy making a post on Facebook, like, is it okay to talk about backyard wrestling now? It's like, you old fossil, like, where have you been the last decade?
Yeah, not wrestling, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
I commented on it, yeah.
But like what were your thoughts on that? Like doing both at the time? Like, what did you get out of backyard wrestling you didn't get out of indie wrestling?
Well, when I started wrestling, like a lot of it was like, it was the tail end of the Attitude Era. You know, WCW and ECW had just kind of went under. And then like, so there was like a lot of old guys that were just dicks and like thought that they were, you know, whatever, maybe they thought they were going to get a job or whatever, but then the business changed. And so then all these old guys are just local guys that are just shit local guys, were just mean to people. So I wanted to wrestle and I wanted to be in front of crowds and stuff, but I wasn't having fun. So like when I backyard wrestled with my friends at the same time, I was having fun. And also I got to wrestle the style that I wanted, and I didn't have to do hip toss, arm drag, body slam, cover, yay, boo, 10 punches in the corner, that kind of stuff. Like I could do that indie style that I wanted, that I like watched CZW and early Ring of Honor and stuff like that. Like where I started and with the guys I started with, nobody wanted to do that. They would all be like, oh, flippy shit, fucking Ring of Honor, bullcrap, blah, blah, blah. Like you're supposed to wrestle like Hogan in 87 and be like, dude, it's 2001. Like, stop it. So like, backyard wrestling was just fun.
So the creative freedom, you got to do what you wanted as a backyard wrestler. How did you end up becoming Christian faith?
So I wrestled at this place called EFW, and we were in a faction called the Garbage Pail Kids, and we got fired. And when we got my friend Josh Babb, who was so dramatic, he ended up starting an indie promotion later on. But like he was so dramatic, the place that fired us, they were like, "Oh, and the Garbage Pail Kids and all the Sandusky kids are fired. Go wrestle at RCW." And RCW was a place where my friend Vincent Nothing, and back then Kid Wicked, and his now brother-in-law Matt Epic, I think his name was Morbid Angel back then. They quit EFW and they bought a ring and they were going to start running their own independent shows because they used to wrestle on a trampoline in a backyard. So my friend Josh, being dramatic as he is, was like, okay, we're going to go fucking wrestle at RCW. So immediately, as soon as we were fired via the website, efw.cc, he emailed Matt Epic and it was like, hey, can we come wrestle with you guys? And they were like, yeah. So we all had to do new gimmicks. And I always wanted to wear a mask because I used to wear a mask when I backyarded before that. And I really liked Hayabusa. So I was like, I want an open top mask. I was 17. And I went on like maskversusmask.com and there was just sick Spawn mask with an open top. I have it. It's like, it's on a mannequin head, like over by my, it's the same exact mask I bought in 2001. End of 01, beginning of 2002 was when this happened. And I used to play Extreme Warfare, but like not 3.0, like the old one. And as you played it, it would give you students out of your school, and one of the students was Christian Faith. And I was like, oh, that's a sick name. So I just stole it. And then I got that mask, and that's literally how it happened.
Now, obviously managing both the backyard wrestling, the independent wrestling, RCW, which category would you have put that in?
I get indie wrestling mostly because we drew like crazy. There'd be like 400 people at these shows. And like at that time, I think I had went and did like a couple training sessions with JT Lightning. I didn't like officially sign up for training. I just went there a few times. And then like, I think once maybe like Josh Prohibition came in and like showed us some stuff one time. I don't remember, man. It was like really like, I was so ass backwards when I got in. Like I didn't know the right way. No one ever told me. I AOL searched backyard wrestling, and this is how I got into the business. So like I didn't know there was, and the only thing you would find of wrestling school when you looked up for it back in the day was like Al Snow's Body Slammers, which was in like Lima, Ohio, which is like 2 hours away from me. And I don't even think it was actually open anymore. So like I didn't know how to get in. But yeah, so like I was like kind of trained, but not really. It was weird, man.
What was the first backyard wrestling super show that you attended?
Oh, the first backyard wrestling super show. Probably Backyard Fest 7. That was in 04. I didn't go to 6. My friend Marion Fontaine and my friend Travis went to 6, which was in Cincinnati. But I didn't go. It was 7. But that was because everybody came pretty much where I lived. So that's when I met like the VCW guys from Vancouver. That's when I met Shulk. Oh no, actually Shulk and Russ came up before that. They came to HWF one time before that. So I guess technically it might have been before Backyard Fest 7. Because like I think like Steve West and Russ Myers and Shulk came up one time in like 03, maybe 02. And because my friend Travis had like a sick ring in his backyard.
Yeah, that was like the best ring. Like fully awesome. Just custom made by his dad?
Yeah, 100%. The only thing that was bought was the ropes. His dad bought ropes off of a ring site, but the rest of it was built by his dad. It was a great ring.
How would you even like know to build the rest of it to spec and use like the real ropes and have it not collapse? Like
there was wires with hose on it strapped to trees in the yard, and that's how you tighten, because the frame was wood, but then the poles were metal,
Yep.
but you can't tighten the ropes because that when you tighten in a ring, you have to tighten the frame up so it doesn't go anywhere, then tighten the ropes because it pulls them in. So when you tighten the ropes, it would pull them in, but then if you tighten these cables that went to the trees, it would pull them back out. Yeah.
That's crazy. Ingenious.
Really, it was, and that ring lasted a long time because, like, I think eventually his mom and dad got divorced or whatever. So like, I had to take over like the ring duties and like make sure things were fixed and stuff. So like, I'd have to like nail boards back together and like fix the ropes and stuff. It just became my job.
What's the farthest you ever traveled for a super show?
I went to Vancouver, British Columbia, in 2005. Yeah, 2005 for Backyard Fest 8. So I flew on the other side of the country. The furthest I ever drove was probably to Rhode Island for Backyard BYE 3.
Isn't that crazy how like the super shows like almost became traveling from GEW in Cincinnati to HWA out by Sandusky to to VCW in Vancouver, and then even to Seekonk, Massachusetts. I think was Backyard Fest 10, right? As part of Backyard Week.
Yep.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. And it's just like there was so much invested and involved at the time too, where it's like, again, I'd mentioned it previously, but like people had to pay dues in order to be able to go towards like helping out with certain people's transportation or, making sure that we had lodging and making sure that like it was backyard wrestling. But like even when you went to VCW, it was like a training facility with like a full professional ring.
Yeah, exactly.
That's obviously Scott Henson, Daniel Makabe, Yakuza J. Yeah, I went out to Vancouver too, and it's pretty amazing because some of those opportunities just through backyard wrestling, it was like you get to see the world, and it's not something that you would ever expected, but it was worth investing to, and it was cool how we all kept a close connection through the backyard wrestling link. I remember you moved out to New Jersey, and when you guys were in Jersey, I was coming down like almost every week.
Yeah.
Was it at that point that we had started putting together the idea for what would become Beyond Wrestling right after I finished college?
Yeah. Yeah. Right around then is when it was after Backyard Week, right? Or was it before Backyard Week?
It was after Backyard Week.
Yeah.
And then that January, we did BYE 9 up at Anthony Stone's Millican gym.
Yeah.
In New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I think that was almost like a test run for what would end up becoming Beyond Your Expectations Wrestling. BYE.
You're forgetting Fate.
Well, I wanted to actually jump back into that. We took all of those matches and we kind of produced a story, which you had taken the lead on editing at that time, to put together a DVD of the best matches from the BYE 9 card, which was a project that we ended up calling Fate. What do you remember about that?
I just remember we wanted to do something. So basically the concept was we wanted to train the backyard kids. Was because there's a lot of talented people that just weren't properly trained and we were all friends with them. So I think we ended up doing like 3 or 4 Fate shows, I think.
Up in New Bedford.
Yeah, because I came to New Bedford I was coming there like at least twice a month, I think, from New Jersey. And I think we did like 2 or 3 or 4. We did a couple guys. I remember one, you weren't even there. And like I would train the backyard kids and show them, because at that point I'd been wrestling for like 6 or 7 years. So like I would show them basics and try to get them caught up because they already kind of knew the moves and stuff. Because again, when you're backyard wrestling, you learn backwards. You learn how to do a power bomb before you properly learn how to bump. So I was just trying to show them the basics and get them working on that so they were safely performing these moves. And then we took all that footage and then like we did some weird storyline where someone was like stalking us or something, and like
somebody was trying to steal the footage because the footage never came out.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. We never released the footage, and then someone stole the footage, and like there was all sorts of, because then we were saying like, wasn't there something where it was like Fate spelled backwards is kind of like theft or thief or something? It was like we were doing weird stuff. We were trying to like make it to where like something said thief or something. I don't remember.
We had pictures of the ring and we darkened it so that the lights were the ropes were like super contrast and like bright colors, and the background was totally blacked out. And I remember doing video effects where stuff was flashing in and out just to try and show our chops as far as what we could do from the production aspect, because that was one of the things that when we would do all of these backyard shows, it's like people would never believe. Like at BYE, at Backyard Fest 10, when you wrestled Scott Henson, we had a tractor trailer truck pulled right up against the ring, and you did a swanton bomb off of it onto like a makeshift janky table. The leg of the table, right, busted right through the wood. I thought you got impaled. You and Scott also did an emerald frozen from the top rope to the ground, but instead of setting the chairs up with all of the seats facing each other, you set it up so that it was all the spines. You somehow cut your face on it. I mean, that was definitely a point where you want to talk about me having meltdowns at shows because stuff gets out of hand and a little bit dangerous now. Like, that shit used to scare me big time.
Oh, I know.
But it sucks because when you want to go back and watch all those shows and kind of share those moments, obviously the presentation is really lacking, especially what people had come to expect from independent wrestling. And it's just one of those things where it's like we had a lot of fun and it was cool that we did it. And it's probably nice that we can go back and watch that footage. But it might not be something that we can show other people just because the presentation was lacking. So everything that we did with the tapings at the Millican in New Bedford, leading up to BYE 9, and then taking some of the select matches from BYE 9 and making that DVD was to show, hey, we can put our own unique spin on the presentation of what we're doing so that it's something that's a little bit more palatable. And obviously, many thanks to you as far as being able to take the time to go through and edit all that stuff, which is something I know that you had an interest in. But also around that time, at least when we started, officially launching Beyond Wrestling, we also had Flip Kendrick heavily involved, and he was kind of more skilled as far as doing the graphic side of thing, the animations, as opposed to piecing the matches together. So it's so funny because everything we did still embodied that DIY spirit up until that point. And, there were very few people, even in the backyard wrestling days, who were just wrestling. Everybody would take on other roles. Like, you never know when you just wrestled a match, you might jump in as the referee. You never knew if you had to jump in as the camera person. So it really created a pretty tight-knit community. And I remember kind of coming out of one of my college classes, and I actually still have the Notepad files of like, these are some of the ideas that I'd like to incorporate if I ever start a professional wrestling organization. And I think around that time is when you and your then girlfriend at the time lived in New Jersey. And at some point, you guys had decided, she's done with school, let's go back to Ohio. Do you remember how the conversation started? Like, what was I, a Budinsky, just like getting in as the third wheel, moving out there?
I don't remember, man. I have no idea. I don't know if it was like, no, I think it was supposed to be the plan all along, because I remember when me and her went to Ohio and stayed with my dad for like a week, and we went and like looked at houses and stuff. And it was always like, oh, Drew and Starbucks are going to be here, so we have to get a house that's big enough for all of us. Because my reasoning to going back was I wasn't getting booked in New Jersey. I couldn't. Like, I don't know why, but I could not get booked. I only worked at like a couple places. I moved back to Ohio and got booked in New Jersey more once I moved back to Ohio.
That's true.
I got booked at Jersey All Pro as soon as I went back to Ohio. And I was pissed because I used to live 10 minutes away from the Rahway Rec Center. Then now I'm driving 8 hours to go do this. But anyways, so there was always the plan that you guys were going to come. So I don't remember if I just brought it up to you that like, hey, I'm going to move back to Ohio because it's a more central place for me to be able to get more bookings. I had Hybrid at the time, AIW, Mega. I knew I had a bunch of bookings I could do. And that's where my tag partner lived, was in Ohio as well. I was like, I need to go back to Ohio. And we all just went because, one, it's cheap as shit to live in Ohio. And, like, especially for all you East Coast kids, we're like, couldn't believe how cheap it was to live in Ohio. And, like, you were trying to get started legitimately in wrestling, and so was Starbucks. So it was like, okay, or Jefferson Saint, we're all gonna move to Ohio, and we're all gonna just start doing stuff there. And I was already established, so I could bring you guys with me.
And to kind of fill in the blanks timeline there, when I finished up school, it was May of 2007. I was still working at D'Angelo's Sandwich Shop through the summer. I ended up getting an internship with Kaiju Big Battle that lasted from the end of 2007 till the start of 2008. I bring that up because you got brought in for a couple shows to wrestle as Slow Fang.
Yes, I totally forgot about that. We went to like the Kaiju warehouse and like, because at the time they weren't using wrestlers, they were just using like college art students. And I ended up doing a training session on their like homemade like ring base thing with some of the Kaiju people and like showing them how to roll and bump and things like that. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, that was a cool time too, especially because we had Cockstrong involved in the mix. I think Alan might have come up a couple times to hang out too.
And
So
Jonah too, I think. Jonah Block.
Jonah, yeah, Jonah
Yeah.
might have been the little sea urchin character, right? That was the
Yeah.
thing that was always cool about Kaiju, is that they never really came up with this is the size of the person that's going to be performing. Let's create a costume for their size. They'd come up with costumes for all different sizes, and then it's like, oh, we need a person of this size to play it. Oh, this person's not around. We're going to retire the character. Oh, this big motherfucker came in. Looks like Slowfang's coming back. And it was cool because Kaiju at that time, well, I mean, cool from my perspective. They obviously hated it. It didn't work out. But it was cool because they wanted to work with me. One, because I had just gotten out of school and had to focus on marketing. But two, because they wanted to see what they could do to appeal to a broader professional wrestling audience. I knew that they had worked with Chikara, and I knew that Chris Hero had worked with Chikara, and I thought that Chris Hero would be somebody that would be cool to bring in, not realizing that Hero and Chikara had splintered right around the same time. And it ended up working out that Kaiju was so cool to both parties that they were able to kind of set aside their differences. And that's actually how I ended up getting my foot in the door professionally, is when I left Kaiju. I emailed Mike Quackenbush and said, hey, look, I don't have much professional wrestling experience, but what can I do to help out behind the scenes? He used to have me hit up different charities to just try and be like, hey, there's a show in the area. Here's, what can we do to give away some tickets to just kind of help the community at large.
I forgot that's how I got into Young Lions Cup.
Was through.
I went with you and Davey Vega, because Vega had been coming down in New Jersey and staying with me, and then going and training at Chikara in Philly, which was like an hour or two drive from me. And so he would come stay with me for the summer, and then I went to Young Lions Cup with you guys just to go. And then what was that guy's name?
Jason Blade. Yeah. I still have the voicemail. I could probably pull up the voicemail and play it right now, where he said that he couldn't get out of work to do the Young Lions Cup. And for whatever reason, I thought that was the funniest thing in the entire world.
I guess I got a missed call from this number, I guess, in regard to the Chikara Cup tonight. I had emailed Mike Quackenbush yesterday in regard to the event. Unfortunately, I had to back out of the commitment because I got called into work, and my sous chef had called out due to a family emergency. So I'm actually working right now, unable to make the event. If you could, please have Mike Quackenbush give me a call at 401-787. Thank you.
Why do you still have that?
I have no idea. He left it on June 14th, 2008 at 7:04 p.m. What time was the show? What was call time? You called at 7 o'clock?
Dude, I remember that because I was just there hanging out. I think the first night I just did security or something, just whatever Quack needed me. And then the second night I knew Bryce, because Bryce used to come to Ohio for this place called CWE, because Hero was booking it when it first started, and Smart Mark used to film for it, and they would bring a lot of the Chikara students in. And I was just there, and Bryce knew who I was from Ohio and was like, hey man, how old are you? And I think at the time I was like, I don't know, 22, 23, I think. Yeah, 22, I think. Right? Well, that was 12 years ago? Yeah, I'm 36. Yeah. So I was 22.
No.
Yeah.
36 right? minus 12 is 24.
24. I was 24. Anyways. So I was like, yeah. I'm under 25. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, I'm fucking under 25. I was like, I pulled out my ID and I showed it to him. I was like, yo, I'm not. I'm 24. And he was like, okay. And I had my gear with me because I always, take your gear everywhere. And that's how I got on the Young Lions Cup. That was the story. I totally forgot that was I was there because of you. Totally forgot about that.
I mean, that guy, you know what I mean? That guy's indicative of everything that used to go on in New England. And were you involved when we did a couple of tapings at Slam Tech with Brutal Bob Evans' school? Probably not. I think that the Harms brothers came up, and maybe Robert Paulson a couple times. And it was funny because it was kind of the precursor to what we kind of knew as studio tapings. But the way that they would tape at Slam Tech in Pawtucket was they would have a wrestling ring in front of a set. The camera would be up against the ring, and then all of the wrestlers would double as the fans, but you would led to believe that it was a studio audience because they'd be behind the camera. You'd never see them, and they'd be making noise. But yeah, dude, even to this day, New England wrestling, that style of wrestling, you wrestle to get to WWE, your whole career lives or dies based on when you get to WWE. I just wasn't about it, and I knew that there would be more opportunities going to Ohio. Obviously, nothing was really doing out here because I wasn't working for Kaiju anymore. I didn't really have any reason to stick around. And it seemed like, wow, like, Rickey and Vince especially would be cool people to be able to learn under, connected with a couple different local promotions. Like maybe I can get my feet wet by moving out to Ohio. I must have been 22 or 23 at the time, and it was the first time I ever moved out of Rhode Island, but it was totally worth it. It was came with my notes packed. A couple months later, Starbucks Jefferson Saint moved in, and dude, there would be so many nights in the living room where, remember, Starbucks always had to have the notepad. Like he couldn't just talk. He always had to have the notepad. He just couldn't just talk about it and just like let the ideas flow. Like I just remember him like sitting on his belly, like feet up, like arms pressed like this, like propping himself up, like taking notes, like
no shirt on.
But dude, the house in Ohio was pretty sick. Like we had it set up where that was right around the time I got like an HD projector. We had a custom built kind of screen that would pull down that we could project. We had a nice flat screen TV on the other side. The only thing that was weird about that house, which actually ended up working out, is that when you went upstairs, there was the hallway, there was a room on each side, but then there was just the rest of the hallway led to nothing. And that ended up becoming kind of an editing suite. That's where your computer was set up, and that's where you were burning the midnight oil, putting those initial DVDs together.
Yeah, because I wasn't working at the time, I don't think. I think if I was, it was very part-time. And so, like, I was just wrestling. And, like, I remember, like, the deal was, like, I would take care of the house. So, like, I'd clean the house, like, do the dishes and, like, all that kind of stuff. And then, like, because I wasn't paying that much rent because I was just wrestling. And then, like, eventually I got a job and things evened out. But, like, at first, I just remember being up till, like, 3 or 4 in the morning cutting those matches together because, one, I am not formally trained on how to do that whatsoever. I just taught myself how to use Adobe Premiere on, like, a crappy computer. And then, like, I remember, like, mid-editing, that computer totally crashed and fucked up. And then you were walking around Walmart and there was like a cheap ass computer and you were like, I'm going to buy this. And you like put it on your credit card. And that was like the Beyond Wrestling, like editing thing. And I just edited all those early YouTube matches where I cut them together. And then Flip Kendrick would give me the graphics, or he would give them to you and you would put them on top of it or something. It was like, I would edit the matches, then you would put the graphics on top and you would do the commentary. And then I would edit the commentary back onto it. And then we would put it on YouTube. It was like crazy.
Plus, you got to remember back then, too, you couldn't just put a file onto a computer. We had to actively sit and capture that in real time to the computer and hope that the Firewire didn't disconnect or that, you didn't skip if you skipped one frame, it was kind of like, shh, don't tell anybody. If you skipped like 3 or 4 in a row, it's like, oh, the whole thing's blown to high hell. What do you remember about the early presentation of Beyond Wrestling that we decided that when the matches hit YouTube, they were going to be single camera angle? We wanted to use that almost like a security camera angle in the corner, and that it was going to be black and white.
I do remember why we did that. Because we wanted to put all the matches, we wanted to show everybody what was going on, but we wanted to give, because at the time, DVDs were still a thing. So the incentive was, okay, if you buy the DVD, it'll be full color, fully edited 2 angles. If you watch them on YouTube, it's this high, like, black and white in like, security camera style, and then you didn't get the full edited, and it was literally incentive to buy DVDs.
I always remember trying to come up with different perks, and even back then I always thought that there would be something kind of inspired by the Backyard Wrestling message board, where there would be a private message board where you could actually interact with the wrestlers before the prominence of social media. What were some of the other initial ideas that you remember that were different about Beyond Wrestling?
I remember I always bring this up, and I think you know exactly what I'm going to say. One time you were like, I want to do a board game. And I was like, what? You're like, I want to get a custom canvas made, and there's like a board game on the canvas, and like wrestlers have to do certain things to like move a spot on the canvas. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? I was like, what do you mean? That doesn't even make any sense. You were talking about making a board game on the canvas, and you had to like do a certain thing to move along the board.
You just reminded me of the 2 wrestlers around Chase Barnett's area. No. It was Milton Parker and Bradley Parker, the Parker brothers. And they were like a board game tag team.
Maybe that's where you got the idea from. Do you remember the Spot Monkeys that you wanted to do?
Yeah, that was the idea. Was in between matches, you'd have 4 guys that were all kind of dressed similarly. They would come in and run like just a minute of spots, and then it would always end in just a standoff, and that would just be like a little palate cleanser between matches.
Yeah, I remember that. That was one of the original ideas I remember you coming up with.
I remember thinking too, like, we had ideas of certain stories and certain people would fill certain roles, and the idea was the Spot Monkey guys would all be guys that would be, in this day and age, it's like, give me a break, but those would be the guys that were too small or too out of shape or whatever, that they'd all be like a similar size, like the wrestler, the backyard wrestler Loco. I don't remember what he ever wrestled professionally as. Or
Jamie Magnum.
Jamie Magnum, there you go, or Jonah, or maybe even Fantastic Max. But yeah, that was, it was always about like what is different. And it wasn't just different for the sake of being different. I always looked at it as what can we do to leverage ourselves, because we have so little resources, but we have so much fun and there's so much talent and creativity. What can we do so that way it'll translate to people that are going to be, watching this when it's all said and done?
I think a lot of the original thing was we had so much fun backyard wrestling and doing these super shows that we were like, we need to show everybody how crazy this is and like what a strong community this is. So if you remember, like that first weekend, we filmed everything. Like us eating, us hanging out. We had all sorts of activities. Because one thing we did when we backyard wrestled, we always had activities planned for local things to go see, like food spots. We went to Toff's Ice Cream, which is like a place in Sandusky. We went to like Chet and Matt's, was just like another like well-known place in Sandusky. And like so like we filmed all that stuff, and the idea was to let everybody in on this community of wrestlers wrestling in front of wrestlers, and like how it made us feel. And I don't know if we ever captured it. We might have, but like there's still times, man, where I think back to those like days of doing those super shows and being like, man, that was what I loved about it. That's why I paid money to travel everywhere. And like it was crazy.
Well, that was exactly it. When you were traveling to the super shows, and then kind of the incentive again for the wrestlers that were coming in to participate in the first Beyond Wrestling tapings was, yeah, guys, we're not paying you. You're doing this on your own time. We hope that you get something out of it, both professionally. We're basically editing together a reel that you can take to other promoters, presenting yourself the way that you envision it. But we would put together full itineraries. Hey, this is the timeline for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Let's go to the indoor water park. Like you said, let's go to Chet and Matt's and do the pizza challenge. Let's go to Toff's and get some good ice cream. And it was, and it would almost be like itinerary A and itinerary B. And itinerary B was the people that wanted to just drink beer and do drugs.
Itinerary didn't have the money to go do all that stuff.
Yeah. And it was cool too with the setup that we had for the house in Ohio. I mean, we dubbed it Wrestle House because you could have 20 or 30 people spread out the rooms, the floors, and somebody was always up, but it worked for what we were doing. It was a lot of fun. It's getting me all emotional thinking about it. These are just like, I guess, memories that I had like compartmentalized somewhere that I just wasn't accessing until now.
Do you remember how we came up with the name?
Tell me.
So I remember this. It was me, you, and Starbucks. I don't know which one of us said it, but we were upstairs in your room. We were all talking, and one of us was saying, like, it was either me or you. I don't think it was Bucks, but, like, it was me or you were like, dude, this is so much, like, there's so much more to this. We need to let everybody see what's going on. Like, it's so much more than wrestling. It's, like, way far beyond wrestling. Like, it's not, and then we all went like, oh, shit. Beyond wrestling, and then that was it. Like that was it. Someone just said it was so much far more beyond wrestling, and then like we all just kind of stopped and we're like, oh shit, like that's the name, and that's 100% where it came from.
Let's credit Starbucks with that because he'll be like pleased as punch.
It might have been
Starbucks.
I honestly don't remember. Yeah, thanks, Bucks. Like it literally might have been him. I don't remember. This was 11 years ago or whatever. But like it was one of us. But I remember all three of us. We were probably watching like a Ring of Honor show up in your room, just bullshitting about wrestling, and then one of us said it.
Speaking of up in my room, do you remember the mini fridge that I had? And one time I thought somebody was shooting up the house, but just a soda got too cold because it was close to the freezer compartment. It just blew up. I was like wicked scared.
I forgot about that. Yo, that happened to me one time. I had a can of like spray, like Pam, and I had it on a stove. And I was living in Cleveland, and I was cooking something in the oven, and it exploded. I got down on the ground and like army crawled to the kitchen. I was like, "What the fuck happened? Someone shot my house up," and it was just like spray butter everywhere. And I was like, "I'm such a little puss." Like, oh god. Anyways.
All right. Well, what were some of the reactions of people in the area in Ohio when we were trying to tell them about Beyond Wrestling?
I mean, I remember there was a little, again, Ohio was kind of regressed in that sense. Like, it was like, you didn't do that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? You didn't backyard. You didn't tell anybody about it. And it was like you wrestled to go to WWE, and no one from that area at the time was going anywhere near WWE. Me and Vince were probably the closest ones, and we were light years away from it. And it was always trying to convince people, like, just come. I'm telling you, just come and watch or do a match. You're gonna love it. You're gonna figure it, like, how cool it is. And like, there was a little bit of pushback at first, but I think once people came and watched and they got the vibe and felt it, I think they were way into it. I don't know that anybody that from Ohio besides me and Vince that really thrived in that.
I think Sean Blaze did it every now and then.
Yeah.
I think, maybe Diamante and Joey the Snake from the Latin Crime Syndicate, and then Eric Ryan, and then Haley Hatred. But that was more so because Haley and Jessica Havoc were calling themselves the female Faith in Nothing, and it was just like, put up or shut up. And then, I mean, the match that she had with Chris Dickinson really kind of steered everything into us kind of allowing for more opportunities for intergender matches. Plus, one of our influences at the time was Clash Wrestling out of Michigan, because they were really ahead of us in terms of what they were doing on YouTube. And I remember they maybe had like somebody dress up as like the Cookie Monster or like a Power Ranger or something like that.
Power Ranger.
And I was just like, what is going on? And then, like, I remember seeing they had Mina Libra in a match, and it just said intergender in the title. And it was like, oh, my God, like, how are there so many more hits on this? Because I don't even know that we would have called it intergender back then. We would have probably just called it mixed, or I don't remember even being familiar with that term until seeing it from them.
Do you know they started on the link, too?
Really?
Yeah, so they used to post videos, Clash Wrestling, of them wrestling in the backyard, and they had a really nice ring. And then they took the ring and put it in that Taylortown Trade Center or whatever, and they started running Clash, and they still run shows there to this day.
All right, so you're a little bit sharper than Dave Cole, a little bit sharper than Tony Deppen, so I can ask you some questions that kind of take us back. Who do you think is the most successful person that used to come from the link? I'm going to throw one at you right out of the gate.
Okay.
Now I forgot. No. Chas Betts, Chad Gable in WWE.
Yeah, Chase Hasty. I would say that's not who I would say the most successful is. Up until a few years ago, I would have said Pac, Adrian Neville, but now Ospreay is the most well known and most successful, 100%.
It always blows my mind. I forget, like, even on the other side of the world, just posting your 3-minute highlight reel for everybody else in the backyard wrestling community, how much it can do to connect everybody, and that was just.
If you want to get real technical, like they never posted, but Pete Dunne used to lurk on the link and watch all the videos, and Mark Andrews as well. They knew who I was, but 3 different people. So they knew Crash from the link because they used to watch the videos. They knew Christian Faith because they used to watch hybrid videos, and then they knew me once they met me. But then once we met is when they put it all together that I was all 3. So yeah, like the link has been to WrestleMania. The link has been to Wrestle Kingdom. Like that, the link has been to Bound for Glory. The link has been to whatever Ring of Honor, whatever Ring of Honor's WrestleMania is, Glory by Honor, whatever it is. Like the link has been everywhere in the business. It's crazy.
Now, it's funny that you were talking about all the different characters, because again, I think that when Beyond started, I just remember I was obsessed with Notepad files, and I would have lists of wrestlers and, just how I thought that they would work and interact and putting together the initial shows. When we did the first taping, you wrestled as Christian Faith with Vincent Nothing, but it was the first time that you attested coming back to doing a character without a mask. And those matches were kind of taped just for the sake of testing the waters, not even to include in the DVD release. What do you remember about that, coming up with the alternate persona? And did you get any, negative feedback from anybody on that? Like, why are you taking the mask off?
I never got any negative feedback from that. At the time, I think everybody knew I was sick of the mask. Like, the only reason I kept the mask was because me and Vince were doing so well. Me and Vince were always on the verge of something, and it was so frustrating. It's one of my big regrets in wrestling. I wish he would have stuck around, but I understand why he didn't. couldn't handle the way the business is, and you got, and it sucks, but like you do have to eat shit for a long time in wrestling, and then you get to make everybody else eat shit. But hopefully you're not an asshole and you don't do that, which is where I think I am. I mean, sometimes I make people eat shit because they're shitheads, but for the most part, I'm very nice and I always give back. But like
that was just really quickly. That was another big thing about Beyond is I was the whole paying your dues thing was so much more prevalent than it is now. And I know that there's less gatekeeping and a lot more people that can get involved that probably can't. But you also shouldn't be taking liberties with people in the ring to treat them, to, teach them a lesson and all that other stuff. Like I do feel like our current generation, the influence of people on the link, helped do away with some of those bad practices. But
I agree with that. But I also understand why it's done because I am not under the impression that everybody can wrestle. I don't think everybody should wrestle. I don't think you should beat someone up and break them and make them not wrestle. I think they should figure it out for themselves. But I understand the practice, but I don't condone it because it was very stupid. And I'm glad that it's gone away. But yeah, nobody ever gave me any shit about taking the mask off because they all knew I wanted. Even Vince knew I wanted to take the mask off. Like, I was over it. I didn't like the mask. I didn't like the gimmick. It was I was still Christian Faith. Like, it's such a dumb name. It's like a weird play on religion. And when I was younger, I was always like, fuck religion, blah, blah, blah. But at this point, I was like, I don't even care. I just want to wrestle. I want to be a professional wrestler. A lot of the time, people never even caught on that the name was like a play on religion. They just thought it was like a name. But I wanted to lose the mask for a while, and I was trying to figure out how to do that with Vince so we could still tag. So I thought Beyond was like the perfect way for me to, I think the name was like Ricky Paradise or Ricky Holiday. I can't remember which one it was. It was Ricky Paradise or Ricky Holiday. Cause when I used to backyard, I always do this like weird gimmick where I would just be like, I was Bob the Boy Band Reject and I would like dance and come out to NSYNC and stuff. So I was like, oh, let's do like a fun gimmick where I don't have to be big badass Christian Faith, like Abyss Kane ripoff. Like I can just be like a fun guy. And I wore like a motocross jersey. I backyard wrestled that in 1999. I still have it. It's in a box somewhere. I wrestled in that, and I wrestled Robert Paulson, who we all called Troll. He was like. Wait
a minute. He preferred that we call him Troll, and he was mad when he was given a real name.
Yes, and he also was mad when we called him his real name, Rob. But he was called Robert Paulson because at Hybrid one time, they did like Project Mayhem. The guy who ran Hybrid was like obsessed with Fight Club, and they would always say his name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson or whatever. It was from Fight Club, which you've probably never even seen Fight Club. You hate movies.
I read the book, believe it or not, because I was the summer that I knew that I was moving with you guys, I was so intrigued by the influence of Fight Club on Hybrid Wrestling and Josh Babb. I'm not into movies, but I used to go to AAA. I'd have my marathon shifts, and I read the book to try and pull some sort of influence or inspiration out of it. That's
okay.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from. And like Troll was he was really annoying, and he got on everybody's nerves.
Let's jump back. I'm sorry, Ricky, to keep interrupting you, but that's how I'm known as Bobby, is because Troll was Robert, and then Rob, and then Robbie, and then Bobby. And I remember Dickinson, because he would drive everybody out. Like Corvus would always get somebody to take care of bringing everybody out. And it was just like one day he just wanted to like lock himself consecutive days in Fat Nick's basement and like not come out with the rest of us. And I just remember like those guys getting in his face and be like, Bobby, and just screaming at him. And eventually it just got to the point where I was maybe had a couple of drinks too many on one Christmas Eve reminiscing about it. And I started yelling Bobby. And then that's just, now people call me Bobby. Fuck you, Troll. I'm not Bobby.
So he was so enthusiastic. He was there through BYE, Fate. He came to every training session we ever did. He was so enthusiastic about wanting to wrestle, and he did so well at Hybrid that I was like, okay, I'm going to wrestle Troll. Like, he's like the star beyond student, if you will, if we had any sort of students then. And I was like, let me just have like a fun match. But I remember, I think in that match, I ruined my ankle. Like, I twisted my ankle so bad. I think it was when he jumped off the pop machine that was outside. And I caught him, and I rolled my ankle, like, real bad. I think he rolled his ankle, too. We were both hurt, I remember. And, like, I had to wrestle at Hybrid the next day, and I was, like, could barely walk. And like, but yeah, like I just remember I wanted to try like a new gimmick, and I knew I was going to lose the mask. And I don't know if Vince had voiced concerns about leaving wrestling at that time. He might have. So I might have just been preparing myself when that was going to happen.
It's funny because you also, during the Fate and BYE 9, you might have wrestled as Lime Rickey.
Maybe,
and you had
yeah.
black kind of like almost like custom basketball shorts, which I wish I had a pair, and they had a big lime on them. And you teamed with Mike Coots.
Yeah, that was custom. Those gear. That wasn't custom basketball shorts. My ex-girlfriend made me Lime Time gear.
I mean, let's face it. Tori was such a big part of the presentation back in the day too. As far as she designed the original Beyond Wrestling logo, which had the computer and television heads on top of the bodies. She was the one responsible. You know, we went and got a couple, some materials. She painted the boards that we used for the set and figured out how to print the things on it. Even got just the random material that was left over after making the curtains for the entrance curtains, just to be able to like create a little more environment on the top. I remember having Ace Jack and Maverick involved when we were actually setting the room at the Mega Gym in Elyria, Ohio, where it was like, hey, here's all this crap. Like we used to go days in advance to move all of the crap because the crap was just spread out. And I thought I just wanted a very simplistic, I don't want people being distracted because there's a cutout of Butterbean in the background. So we would go and push it all and set it up and block it all off and have like those big wooden frames. Sorry.
Yeah, Shilson helped a lot too with the lighting, because remember we put like floodlights on the garage door opening thing, the rail of it, and we kept blowing the breaker.
Yep.
So we had to run an extension cord outside out the window and down a couple units at that place and plug it in outside. Like we unplugged the pop machine and plugged that in because we kept blowing the breakers because we were trying to light it properly. We did everything ourselves. It was kind of crazy.
I wish I knew then what I learned shortly thereafter, how to shoot, though, between the ropes, because I can even go back and watch some of the older footage as it's coming to IWTV. That was probably a good time to reiterate that this this positive contact is coming courtesy of Independent Wrestling TV, so sign up for IWTV.live using promo code BEYOND. Yeah, whatever. You guys know the deal already. But I can see myself from the shot that we used as like the corner security camera in the background so far away, like still like trying to produce, but like engaged with bullshitting with everybody and having a good time. And it's like, oh, I wish I knew, like, no, bring the camera between the first and middle rope and be able to shoot underneath and get in there. And, but that goes back to, again, we were so concerned about the presentation, but there were simple things that we were still learning on the job. You brought up hybrid a couple of times. I kind of want to jump in. I know that the first week was specifically designed knowing that we had some people that weren't trained, that the idea was that on the Saturday, they would buy tickets and go to the hybrid show. And I thought that, man, this is doing a big favor because hybrid always does well anyway, but now there's going to be people that are really enthusiastic. I brought it up when I was talking to Dave Cole because he wrestled Christopher Daniels. And I remember a lot of us were really excited for that match. But the thing that really kind of fragmented the relationship between Beyond Wrestling and Hybrid Wrestling right on the first weekend, of course, was Mike Quest had been driving out with everybody, and he tried saying that Beyond Wrestling was the reason he couldn't, and therefore he needed a flight to Hybrid for the first time, which in reality he was just sick of driving out because it's a long drive, as often as Hybrid was running. And it was kind of like, well, you have to kick in $40 for it. And it's like, dude, we didn't have any money at the time. And on top of that, it was like resentment from some of the other people locally. Well, it's like, well, how come you're going in wrestling for free for Beyond Wrestling? I'm coming to pay. So I'm sure I can understand the other side of it. It's like, well, why are we paying for them to basically do their show? I still thought it was kind of a symbiotic relationship where both sides had something to gain for it. But that was stressful. And I think that put a big strain on kind of the inner workings where if Beyond and Hybrid were going to work hand in hand and you were kind of at the nucleus between the two organizations, I think that ended up putting a lot of stress on the relationship between Beyond and Hybrid and maybe personally for you and some other people as well.
100% did. Like it was always trying to explain to them, like, listen, there's no money in this. Like, there's no money in putting these on YouTube. We're not selling any DVDs. Like, it's just kind of like a concept at this point. Just bear with it. You know what I mean? And like, I was so involved with Beyond, I wanted, I was friends with AIW and like hybrid because I think it caused a lot of problems with AIW at first before they kind of understood it, And so it was like putting strain on my relationship with these people in a business way because I was wrestling for them. But then also I was like, listen, man, it's just like there's no money. We're not taking money out of your pocket. Like, I promise you, like, we're just getting these guys out here a day earlier. And like, again, a lot of other people that are not going to be on the show are going to pay to come watch the show because they like the shows. But like that always kind of made me mad because hybrid definitely came out of backyard wrestling 100%. My friend Josh, we started another like joke backyard wrestling fed because we were bored. It was called WAG, Wrestling Al Green. And my friend Josh Babb came to that and saw Lewis Linden wrestle Flip Kendrick, and they had a crazy match. And he was like, "Man, I'm gonna put that." He was talking about running shows at that time. He's like, "I'm gonna put that match on one of my shows," and he did. And then he booked a bunch of the backyard guys because I knew them, and they were all really good, like Quest, Dave Cole, Dave Logan, me, Flip, Shilson, Lewis. Who else? Russ came up.
Andy and Arbo,
Josh Abercrombie, just like a whole list of people that came from the backyard crew. So like I thought maybe he would understand, but again, I do see it from his point too of being a promoter. And it was like, listen, I'm paying trans, I'm paying for these guys to come out here. You're getting them to come a day early and then not paying. And so I understand both sides of it. But again, it wasn't like we were making money off of this. It was just like a thing we were trying to see what would happen.
and if anything, what's kind of strange is, unfortunately, by virtue of me trying to pull everybody together as I am one to do, a lot of times when people that aren't necessarily associated start working together through me, it just kind of exacerbates the distance and pushes them even farther apart. And one of the opportunities that we had, speaking of both hybrid and AIW, when I was working at Ghostly Manor Thrill Center as the marketing director, is when Colt Cabana and Daniel Bryan hit up AIW. It was like, hey, we have to do a show on the Thursday to fit our schedule for the initial Wrestling Road Diary. Do you have a venue? And Thorne reached out to me because I had been doing behind-the-scenes stuff for both hybrid and AIW, and I think I had started commentating for AIW at that point. And I was just like, well, hybrid's done a couple shows here. Let me reach out to Josh from hybrid. And the thought was, hybrid's going to be back every single month. AIW is going to do this as a one-time thing. They're going to bring in names. Why don't you guys alternate matches on the card? And then when AIW is done and the Wrestling Road Diaries comes out, hybrid will get a nice little plug from that. And when we come back next month, you don't got to worry about AIW. And hybrid went along with booking all of the matches. And then the next day basically ran like a big free show a town over and like really pushed like, oh, don't go to the show at the Ghostly Manor. Don't go support the Wrestling Road Diaries. Just go to the free show the next day at the fair. When you're talking about AIW, I remember Thorne and Biggins, they came to Beyond Tapings, and they would bring Wayne Palmer and Rompin' Stompin' Ronnie too. But Josh never came to a Beyond taping. He came to the house a couple times. But that's when Thorne and Biggins, as much as we were talking about the presentation and how you were trying to get people to understand it, and maybe, as good of a job as we did, we still didn't do the job. When Biggins and Thorne finally got there, they understood it. And that opened up the door for opportunities for guys like Chris Dickinson and Eric Alvarado and Corvus and Chase Burnett and Zane Silver to start getting other professional bookings, but it was how they presented themselves in Beyond Wrestling. It wasn't, hey, we need you to play this character. It was what they wanted to do and how they, felt that they should be. And so, everybody has different opportunities with the way that they progress with their careers. But AIW got it more. And if it wasn't for AIW legitimizing Beyond, I kind of question how much farther it would have gone out of the gym in Elyria, Ohio.
For sure. The whole scene in Ohio, and it's still like this today, is nobody works together. They all work against each other at all times. It's infuriating. And hybrid was the same way when hybrid was around. AIW didn't like hybrid didn't like AIW. AIW didn't like JT didn't like PWO liked hybrid, and then now, oh wait, no, JT likes AIW and they both hate PWO, and then they both hate hybrid, but oh wait, JT still did hybrid. But so it was like always, they'd be flipping sides all the time. They'd always take everything as an act of war, and it was just like, dude, stop. And it still happens. It still goes on around here. It's crazy. So like, that I always remember I was in the middle of it because I worked at all those places, because all those places would be like, no, you can't work there. And me and Vince would be like, no, fuck you. We're going to work wherever we want. And then they would not use us for a show. And then we would come back. So we were some of the only people that worked at all of those places. So I was always in the middle of everything. And I was like childhood friends with the guy who ran Hybrid, Josh. And I remember the double joint show. And it was just like, dude, this is going to be good. Like, don't worry about it. Like, this Wrestling Road Diaries thing's gonna be huge, like blah blah blah, and he just didn't take it like that. So he like sabotaged on purpose, and it was just like, it was so stupid. But I mean, it worked out for AIW, obviously.
Yeah, I remember Hybrid being a big influence, though, especially with the presentation and the really slick music videos and the high octane, action packed wrestling. And I never really envisioned anything more for Beyond Wrestling at that point. Once we actually got started and had our first taping under our belt. Than kind of being something that was more of would have a symbiotic relationship with a company like Hybrid Wrestling. And unfortunately that never materialized. And that kind of pushed me then to want to eventually, take Beyond and kind of do that without anybody else. Do you remember like Vince, like, even though he had come up, because I think that when we did the BYE 9 show, that might have also been in conjunction with a pro show called the Coroba Pro.
Yes.
So, there was kind of incentive at that point. But do you remember ever having to sell any of the other wrestlers? Because let me just frame it like this. We didn't tell anybody that we were doing Beyond Wrestling. We told everybody that it was BYE 10. And it was invitation only, which wasn't uncommon for the super shows at that point. And probably 80% of the people were either trained or had professional training. There were still other people like Ozzy Mack and Bad Guy, that were there for atmosphere just as much as, for what they contributed in the ring. But do you remember anything specifically as far as trying to have to tell the wrestlers?
No, I remember Vince knew what was up because he used to do HWF with us, like randomly before he started like doing pro shows. And then he never understood why I traveled so much. Like when you had to drive an hour, like to go wrestle in the backyard, he got it. But like when I started, driving to Rhode Island, he's like, what are you doing, man? And like when I went to Vancouver, he's like, I don't get this. And I'm just like, yeah, man, I try to explain it to him. Then eventually it was just like, just come and you'll find out. I think once Vince did that first, like, I guess you would call it the pre-pilot or whatever you want to call it, BYE 9, he was like, oh, okay, I get it. And he had fun. And like, it was like, because we did Faith and Nothing versus Mike Quest and Scott Henson. And so like, it wasn't like it was like, Ricky Crash and fucking Kid Wicked. It was like our pro names, you know what I mean? So like, I think he always kind of understood. Vince was a very hard person to deal with in the business. He didn't like the way wrestling, you had to act in wrestling. Like he didn't like the way that you had to kind of like eat shit a little bit. So like, he was always just a hard sell anyways, but everybody else, I mean,
what was the I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What was the conversation like with Jeff Traxler from Mega Championship Wrestling to let us use the gym?
I think it was like, hey Jeff, we want to film some stuff in here. Like how much? And Jeff was like, oh, $. Okay, whatever. And however much we gave him, I don't even remember what the deal was. Maybe like $50 a day or something.
$50 a day sounds about what we could afford.
Yeah, so it was like, okay, like, yeah, no worries. And he would I had a key to the place anyways because I used to run training there. And I would just be like, all right, well, we're going to go up on this day. And he's like, okay, just make sure you clean up. And we were like, okay. And we went, like you said before, we went above and beyond to clean because that place was a mess all the time. So we, like, if anything, made that place better because we would clean everything, get everything out of the way, make it look nice, like all sorts of stuff. I remember we were talking about, like, painting the walls. I think we wanted to, like, hang, like material down so the whole room was black. But we just obviously didn't have the budget for it, so we didn't because I think we ended up, like, buying cameras and that computer and things like that. Like, so like, yeah, I think it was just, hey, Jeff, we'll give you money. And he was like, okay.
Now that you bring it up, that's one of the first concessions I had to make is when we did the pilot taping, it was black ropes, black post, black canvas, black ring skirt, and everything was black. Because I thought, too, the presentation, let's have a minimalistic presentation so the focus is entirely on the wrestlers in the ring. And I also remember, like, even around that time, just for some reason, the thought was in my head where it's like, how can we shoot wrestling so it'll be easier to watch on a mobile device? are there certain camera angles that we'd have to get into? Not that it's something that ever played out, but these were always different ideas. And I mean, even the promo videos that we would share just with our friends, just to get them excited about like, hey, this is what we're doing. What do you remember from the actual pilot taping itself?
I just remember being really busy, like, because it was like me and you were doing everything.
Plus, you wrestled
like,
4 or 5 times.
Yeah, plus I had to wrestle. Plus I had to be like backyard Ricky and pro Ricky at the same time, which at that time, those were like 2 different people all the time. So this time it was like, okay, I'm like, my professional relationships are here. Like Vince is here and we're dealing with Traxler, and I got to make sure nobody fucks his building up. I got to make sure no one's drinking in the parking lot and smoking weed in the porta potty or doing whatever the fuck they're doing. You know what I mean? Like I had to like worry about that. You were worried about filming and getting the matches together, and you're a hectic person as it is. I don't even understand how you run shows, to be honest. It's a miracle you get through each one. But like, I just remember being like really busy, and also we were like trying to have fun. I think we took a grill up there, and I bought a bunch of food, and we just made food. And I was like, "Yo, give me $5. You can eat as much food as you want." And I just cooked like pounds and pounds of meat, and just like we just hung out. Like I remember it being like hella fun weekend. I remember going to Kalahari, the indoor water park, and like going ass up in the lazy river, and like just doing stuff like that. Like so, like it was like a lot of fun.
Remember the vibe coming out of that first taping?
Yeah, it was just like every other backyard show, man. We were hyped. But now, where those backyard shows never saw the light of day, besides if someone made a music video, we were like, okay, we're going to edit this, we're going to put it out, we're going to make a DVD, but also we're going to put it on YouTube. Because at the time, 2009, YouTube had been out, 4 years at that time? I think YouTube started in 2005.
Oh, maybe if that, yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I had a YouTube as soon as it came out. I had one of those old accounts, those directors accounts. You know that like weird period when they were switching over to like the other, like how YouTube is now, but people were selling those director accounts. I had one of those. And so like, but it got like grandfathered because I used to be able to upload more than 10 minutes.
Yep.
Like all that stuff. And so like I had a YouTube as soon as it came out. And I was like, yo, this is how you're going to start watching stuff now. I remember putting a music video up there of like, it was Marion Fontaine and the North Star Express, Ryan Cruz and Darren Corbin against Sarah Del Rey and the Colony. I made a music video of this. It's still on my YouTube. I think the upload date is like 2006. It's on my YouTube right now. If you look up Rickey Shane Page YouTube, it's there. So like, I remember being like, this is going to be awesome. Like we're starting like a new thing, and we're going to put all this stuff on YouTube, and this is how people are going to watch wrestling, which we did not know if that was how people were going to watch wrestling. Because at the time, it wasn't. It was so like frowned upon to download like shows, but every show, it was like, bro, if you wanted to be an independent wrestling fan, you had to pay $20 a DVD plus shipping every month for multiple promotions. It was just like, it was starting to become impossible. And I think that was one of the reasons why a lot of independent wrestling didn't grow, is because they couldn't. There was only so many fans, and they only had so much money. So it was like, we got to put it on YouTube. That
was definitely one of the driving forces, because I just remember how often I would download torrents because I wanted to keep up with everything. I wanted to watch it, and there was no way that I would be able to have $200 or $300 every single month to pay for everything that I wanted to watch. And so the idea was, I mean, I remember at times I would try to purposely leak our edited shows onto torrents to try and get more people to watch it. The thought process being, you're never going to pay to support something if you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
So, and then it was kind of like, put the matches up there and come up with different levels of people want to support. If the people just want to watch the matches for free, they can go to the YouTube channel. If they want to actually pay to support and have a collector's item, they can buy the DVD when it's released, and then trying to come up with different ways that people could support as well. Yeah, I mean, the whole YouTube thing, going back to, I remember one of the reasons that we settled in on the name Beyond Wrestling is because we were able to secure Beyond Wrestling on all of the social media, and it was uniform, and I was a big stickler for that as well.
I am too. I'm the same way. All my social media is Rickey Shane Page.
It's got to be.
It has to be.
It's just too confusing otherwise, and it creates so many opportunities for other people to swipe in and do copycat stuff or just other misleading stuff. So, yeah, man, those were the good old days.
So I'll have a question for you. What made you decide to go from tapings to live shows? Because I wasn't around at that point.
Sure. It part of it probably had to do with my relationship with AIW went south as well. Specifically because I put up the money to bring Daniel Bryan in when he was released from WWE before he went back to SummerSlam to wrestle Johnny Gargano for Absolution that year. And there was a lot of money coming out of it. And I remember they wanted to just go to Warped Tour. And I was just like, you had to pay to be on Warped Tour. And I didn't think that that was a wise investment in the money. So I remember saying, well, as long as we get flyers printed up in time, and I don't think Fat Nick met the deadline. And it was just kind of like, it just seemed like this masturbatory, like, what are we doing here? Like, we're all trying to elevate our game. Like, I connected AIW with Chikara. AIW did that whole trios tournament just to send one team to Chikara. And that was always the Beyond Wrestling method too, was who can we partner with? Who can we bring together? Working with Chikara, working with CGW, doing training seminars, doing studio tapings. And that's how our guys always ended up getting more work. At the end of the day, Beyond Wrestling, the one driving factor above all else was always networking. It's creating opportunities. So, I had mentioned something to Traxler, and Traxler said something to Thorne, and it was just bad for a couple months. At the same time, Necro Butcher was trying to tell them that I was going to money mark a new promotion for them in Ohio, or to run against them, because he was pissed at the time that they weren't using him regularly when he was so close, and Thorne wanted to only work with him on special occasions. And it just so happened that me and Chase Burnett went to a couple baseball games with him. So on the outside looking in, it could make sense that I would have a growing relationship with the Necro Butcher. But it just got to a point where, I even remember trying to do the Developmental Hell taping, which is the last one we ended up doing in Ohio. It's like, it's not worth this. That was also coupled with my personal life at the time, which, once you moved out and Starbucks moved out and Marsha moved out and then Chase Burnett moved out, some of the people that I lived with locally, two girls that were on an exchange program from Brazil at Kalahari that were leaving food all over the place and attracting rodents to the house. There was this guy that got discharged from the Marines that one night just got real drunk and cheated on his girlfriend at the house, and then had a mental breakdown and then started stealing stuff. Ohio wasn't really doing me too many favors. And if you remember too, Ghostly Manor, they switched me from doing marketing stuff to working on that ICTV project, which was selling these basically computers to take branded postcards at special events. Everything was just going to shit. I knew that I wanted to go back to New England, and timing wise, it felt like if we were going to make a big move, that maybe we had grown our audience enough to test the waters for doing a live show. And we ended up partnering with Interspecies Wrestling in July of 2011, doing About Time and Danbury. When we moved back to the East Coast to start doing tapings, Matt Hack, who worked with ISW, specifically was coming to the tapings, and Dan Barry wanted to get involved, and Dave Cole started getting back involved. So again, networking, there was enough crossover, and it seemed like, hey, this is something that we can pull off. The first show we did, there were maybe 75 people there, and it just felt like such a big accomplishment at the same time. And I remember Matt Hack hammering me over the head with, it's a doubleheader. I know how these tapings go. It has to be on time. And I just kept saying, it's all about the time. It's all about time. That's how I came up with the name About Time for the show. I don't want to gloss over the fact that the tapings, we used to have so much fun, but the tapings were long days. It wasn't match after match after match. And that was one of the reasons that everybody could stay ringside for every match, because you could take a break after the match to practice whatever it was you needed in the ring before your match started. Sometimes it was cool, but for the people that weren't with it originally, it's just why are we in this building in Allentown for 9 or 10 hours? Because one of the tapings that we did, Corvus ran, and I was at my cousin's wedding. And it was just completely off the rails. And that was one of those precursors to doing our first live show where it's can Beyond Wrestling pull it together? But it just, the timing of the way that everything worked out, and it still took us 2 years of doing live shows to really try and figure out what it was to capture the authentic Beyond Wrestling experience for a live crowd when we did the first American Rana. But I should probably get Corvus on one of these, because he was really instrumental in the early days of Beyond too, as far as being the liaison to bring out everybody from the East Coast. But it's so funny. I lived on the East Coast. You were temporarily in New Jersey. We moved back to Ohio. And then, like you said, you started getting more bookings in the East Coast. But then there would be sometimes 3 or 4 carloads from the East Coast just coming out to do the Beyond tapings.
And hybrid too, as well. Yeah, it was always getting. There was always a New Jersey car, always.
Always, always. So, we did the live shows, and here we are today, and it's cool because just even having this conversation right now is helping remember some of the components that made Beyond Wrestling unique to start, and maybe some of the things we never got a chance to implement, like the spot monkeys. And there's always hopefully time to introduce some of that stuff if wrestling ever comes back to normal.
I think the moral of this entire beginning origin story is work together. Stop fighting each other. Who cares if someone runs in the same town as you? Like the British scene, everybody works together. Sure, there are people that they don't like, certain people or whatever, but they all work together. That is how everybody thrives. You have to work together with local promotions. You have to have these working relationships. Like Beyond is a testament to that. Like there was always been a working relationship, and now legitimately are a pioneer in wrestling and a benchmark. People try to get to Beyond Wrestling. You guys are like in the forefront of independent wrestling. So many people have gotten signed off of this stuff. And it's all because of working together. Sure, relationships strain and people go certain ways and then they end up coming back together, whatever. But I think it's just, that's the moral of the story. It's just don't work against each other. It's just going to make it harder.
Well, I know that for the period of time when you weren't at the tapings and not involved in Beyond Wrestling, it certainly was more difficult for me to try and shoulder everything. Obviously more difficult as far as connecting in the area and less fun. That was one of the things that kind of stunk. Even just when we first started Beyond Wrestling and you had the guys that would, they would travel for the backyard wrestling shows and then they wouldn't come to Beyond Wrestling when it was like, hey guys, we're so close to the light at the end of the tunnel. Look at all of the work that me and Rickey and Starbucks are putting in order for you to kind of start to get some of the benefits of the hard work that you've put in. And then those people stop showing up. And I will admit this, I was very resentful for a very long period of time of a lot of those people because it was frustrating to me that it felt like that all that work went unappreciated.
Yeah. For sure. And listen, I was one of those people. I was in a way bad way personally, and then physically, I didn't wrestle for a whole year, and I had to restart over after I came back from my neck injury. So I miss those studio tapings, and I wish that things didn't go the way they did. But I'm glad that everything's mended now, and that the fact that you even credit me as a co-founder is meaningful to me. Beyond is going to go down in history as one of the big indie promotions. And the fact that when I come back for a show, it's always co-founder or, whatever, that's cool to me. That's super rad. I'm glad that I can leave a footprint in wrestling somewhere. You know what I mean? If I don't do anything else in wrestling anywhere else, at least if people talk about Beyond Wrestling, in the history books, it'll be co-founder. You know what I mean? So that to me is cool. But it's just, I don't know, man. It's none of this shit is worth it. At the end of the day, look at it now. Everybody's fighting all this stuff. Guess what? We're all stuck in our houses. It don't matter. No, all this stuff stopped like that. It don't matter. It's bullshit. So don't fight about it. Just work together and it'll be all right. And this is a good time to mend those fences. When everything comes back to normal, who cares about any of that crap? Just go, just whatever, just do it. You know what I mean? Just help each other out.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I mean, speaking personally, I know that when Beyond Wrestling partnered with IWTV or whatever it was before it was IWTV to form IWTV, that has been an incredible working relationship. And there's so many opportunities that we had. 2 seasons of Uncharted Territory. How about before I let you go, if I'm not keeping you too long, talk about what it was like to do the 10-year show and wrestle Eric Ryan, which I wish we could get that match on YouTube, but I cannot jeopardize the channel. That shit is fucked up. So let me get my plug-in out of the way. Go to Independent Wrestling TV. That's IWTV.live. Sign up using promo code BEYOND. And it is the May 8th, 2019 episode of Uncharted Territory, Rickey Shane Page versus Eric Ryan in an absolutely disgusting match. I as much as that shit bothers me, I also loved every minute of it. But what was that experience like for you?
It was awesome. I couldn't believe that it was 10 years. Also, I know how freaked out you get, so I turn it up a notch when I'm around you. I try to get you uncomfortable because I know I can see I don't even think about that crowd. All I think about is you going, oh God, oh God. and like freaking out. Like, so I purposely, like, I did it like when we did shows at FET, when I wrestled Matt Tremont, I was like, all right, I'm going to turn these chairs around the other way. I'm going to go spines up. I'm going to take a superplex on it. I'm going to fall off this cage and hit the ground. Like, I'm just going to try to freak Drew out. Like, that is my main goal. So when I wrestled Eric Ryan, I was like, all right, he wants a death match. Let's do it. Get those. Someone brought syringes. I was like, bring them. Let's do it. We'll do some syringes. Like, it was great, man. Just, again, the fact that, like, that Beyond has grown so much, that there's so many YouTube subscribers, so many YouTube hits. Like, the fact that you did live television streaming weekly. No independent wrestling company has ever done that. Ever. Some major wrestling companies don't fucking do that. It's taped. So the fact that you even pulled it off is insane. So, like, it was awesome to be a part of that. And, like, again, Eric Ryan, again, he was there in the beginning. You know what I mean? Eric's been one of my friends forever in wrestling, and, like, I've known him forever, and he's doing the deathmatch thing now. So it's like, okay, let's go out there and go crazy, give people what they want, freak Drew out, and, like, just celebrate 10 years. And it's insane that, like, from us backyarding and just wanting to have fun and hang out with our friends turned into what it has. And to be able to celebrate 10 years is cool. And I hope I can celebrate 20 if I'm still around. I'll be a ref or something, or ring the bell.
You'll probably be around. We don't know if wrestling will go back to live events, but hey, we were at the forefront of taping wrestling without fans. So if it comes down to limited crowds, you know, give Ricky a call, give me a call. We'll go through Starbucks' old notebook and try and find some of the, different notes that he had taken.
We'll do that board game show. Easy.
The board game show, yeah.
The board game on the mat.
That's a wild one. Anything else you want to get in before we wrap it up?
No, man, just thank you again. Like, it's crazy to me that this is, like, Beyond still a thing, and that, like, it's gotten so big and people have gotten jobs out of it. Like, it's awesome, and I'm, like, proud of it. And, like, I'm just glad that it's still around and that you're working so hard to, like, keep it up. And, like, when I get to come back, even though it's very sparingly, like, I love it. It's fun, and it's just, like, cool to come back and look and be like, wow, this is, like, still a thing that we started in this little garage in Elyria, Ohio that is literally 10 minutes from my house. Like, I drive by there sometimes, and I'm just like, oh, it's still there. Like, there's that place.
My family wanted to go on vacation this past summer, and they wanted to go to Tofts. They wanted to go to Kalahari. They wanted to go to Cedar Point. And my dad's like, you have to drive back. And I drove past it and took a picture, and I couldn't believe it. And honestly, I think at that point, I might have even hit you up and be like, hey, man, what do you think it's going to cost to rent that? Why don't we just rent it just to have it? And that's how much it means to me, is that I would burn money just to be able to keep something that special kind of in our possession.
It's still empty. There's nothing in there that I know of. And this, you know, that red curtain that was over the door? It's still there. The same red curtain is just right over the door. It's still there.
It's cool, man. Maybe we'll start doing secret shows again to try and fly under the radar. Not that I want to put anybody in any sort of physical risk with their health or anything like that, with people traveling from all over the area, but definitely missing the shows. It's definitely starting to get a little frustrating, but it's cool that we have the opportunity to do things like Positive Contact, that the technology is there now to support it, that we can imagine if we had to do this. Oh, you can do 10 minutes on YouTube. Okay, let's upload this video in 7 different parts right now. Like, what? No wonder why we had to edit so much shit back in the day. What a pain in the ass.
Yep.
But I'm so excited that we get to have this conversation and finally have all this stuff documented for the ages. We got to do this again. I love catching up with you. We got to talk about all the great things that you're doing. I mean, dude, on top of the world right now, GCW champion, and all of the decisions in your career that led you to that point of becoming one of the biggest stars in independent wrestling. I know I'm no Stone Cold Steve Austin, but
hey, listen, I don't do these often, but when I do, I do them for the big guns.
All right, man. I appreciate it. You be good. All right.
Thanks, man.
I'll talk to you soon.